The rain hit the pavement like 1,000 tiny accusations, each drop a reminder of every person Marcus had walked past, every outstretched hand he'd ignored, every plea for help he'd pretended not to hear. He stood beneath the flickering streetlight on Fifth Avenue, his expensive suit soaked through, his briefcase abandoned somewhere between the office and this moment of reckoning. Just an hour ago, he'd been untouchable, a Wall Street titan closing million-dollar deals before breakfast. Now he couldn't even remember his own phone number to call for help. The doctor's words echoed in his skull. Early-onset Alzheimer's. Aggressive, maybe 2 years of clarity left. At 42, Marcus Chen was watching his mind prepare to betray him. And he'd never felt more alone in a city of 8 million people. That's when he saw her. She wasn't remarkable at first glance. A small woman in her 60s, maybe 70s, draped in layers of mismatched clothing, pushing a shopping cart filled with her entire world. But something about the way she moved through the storm caught his attention. She wasn't rushing to escape the rain. She was stopping, bending down, checking on others huddled in doorways. Her cart rattled along behind her. And in the split second when lightning illuminated the street, Marcus saw her face clearly. She was smiling. "You look lost, son," she said, materializing beside him with the quiet grace of someone used to being invisible. Up close, Marcus could see the deep lines etched around her eyes, the weathered hands clutching a plastic bag over her head as an improvised umbrella. Her eyes, though, they were bright, alert, alive in a way that made his chest ache. Marcus started, then stopped. What was he, fine? Far from it. Lost, absolutely. I just got some bad news. She nodded slowly, as if he'd just told her something profound. The worst news always comes on the worst days, doesn't it? Weather knows things. About timing we don't. She glanced at his expensive watch, his designer shoes. You got somewhere to go? Marcus thought about his penthouse apartment, empty except for the things money could buy. He thought about the assistant who scheduled his life in 15-minute increments, the colleagues who'd scatter the moment he showed weakness, the family he'd neglected for so long they'd stopped calling. Not really, he admitted. Well then, she said, as if that settled everything. Come on, I know a place. He should have said no. Every instinct screamed at him to call a car, go home, process this nightmare alone like he processed everything else. But something, maybe the shock of his diagnosis, maybe the kindness in her eyes, maybe the first crack in the armor he'd worn for decades, made him follow her. She led him 3 blocks to a church basement, its entrance almost hidden behind a dumpster. Warm air and the smell of coffee wafted up the stairs. The room below was crowded with people society had forgotten. Men in tattered coats, women with hollow eyes, kids who should have been anywhere but here. And in the middle of it all, volunteers serving soup, handing out blankets, treating every person like they mattered. This is St. Anthony's, the woman said, shaking rain from her makeshift umbrella. Been coming here 23 years, volunteering for 18. She caught his expression and laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Surprised? Used to be just like them. She gestured to the people in line. Then I decided to be like them instead. She pointed to the volunteers. I don't understand, Marcus said. You will, she replied. I'm Dorothy, by the way. Folks here call me Miss Dot. Over the next hour, Marcus watched her work. She knew everyone's name, their stories, their favorite way to take their coffee. She joked with a veteran who'd lost both legs in Iraq, helped a young mother change her baby's diaper, sat with a teenage boy who couldn't stop crying. And between all of this, she told Marcus her story. She'd been a nurse once, married to her college sweetheart, living in a brownstone in Brooklyn. Then came the cancer, her husband's, not hers. The bills piled up faster than prayers could be answered. She lost the house, then the job, then him. For 2 years, she'd lived on these same streets, in the same shelters, eating at the same soup kitchens. Rock Bottom's got a funny echo, she said, ladling soup into a styrofoam bowl. You hear yourself real clear down there. And I heard myself asking what I was going to do with the time I had left. So you decided to give it away? Marcus asked, something catching in his throat. I decided to give it back, she corrected. Every bit of kindness someone showed me when I was down there, I'm just returning it. With interest. She handed the bowl to a man with haunted eyes and a gentle smile. Been sleeping in my sister's spare room for 15 years now. Got a part-time job at a bookstore. Don't need much. Turns out joy doesn't cost what I thought it did. Marcus spent that night at St. Anthony's, not serving, just watching. He saw Miss Dot reunite a mother with her daughter, both of them having been homeless at different shelters. He watched her talk a young man out of the edge of something dark just by listening. He observed the way people's faces changed when they saw her, how shoulders relaxed, how guards dropped, how humanity returned. At midnight, as they cleaned up, Marcus finally told her about the diagnosis, about the fear, about looking back at 42 years and realizing he'd spent them accumulating things instead of moments. Miss Dot sat down beside him on a folding chair, suddenly looking every one of her 71 years. "You know what the blessing is?" she asked. "Blessing?" Marcus nearly laughed. "There's no blessing in forgetting everything, everyone." "The blessing," she said firmly, "is that you know." My Harold didn't get that. Cancer took him in 6 weeks. Didn't even get to say goodbye proper. But you've got time to decide what you want to remember. You've got time to create memories worth keeping, even if they don't keep. Something broke open in Marcus's chest then, something that had been locked tight for decades. He cried, big, ugly, gasping sobs that echoed in the empty basement. And Miss Dot just sat there, her small hand on his shoulder, keeping him tethered to the world. The next morning, Marcus didn't go back to his old life. He called his office, arranged a leave of absence, and returned to St. Anthony's. He started volunteering 3 days a week, then 5, then 7. He learned to serve soup without seeing the expensive suit underneath the grime. He learned to listen without formulating his next response. He learned to be present in a way he'd never been, even before his diagnosis. Miss Dot became his teacher in the art of purposeful living. She taught him that kindness wasn't a transaction. You didn't give it to get something back. You gave it because giving it changed you. Every person you help, she'd say, is you helping yourself remember what being human means. Months passed. Marcus's symptoms progressed slowly, a forgotten appointment here, a lost word there. But he filled those spaces with something more valuable than memories. He filled them with meaning. He got to know the regulars at St. Anthony's. There was Tommy, the veteran who taught him how to find joy in small things. Maria, the mother of 3 who showed him strength he couldn't fathom. Ezra, the teenager who reminded him what hope looked like. And always there was Miss Dot, the tiny powerhouse who'd turned her tragedy into triumph, her loss into legacy. One evening, nearly a year after that rainy night, Marcus arrived at St. Anthony's to find everyone gathered in the main room. Miss Dot sat in the center, looking smaller than usual. Her sister stood beside her, tears streaming down her face. "Dorothy had a stroke," Father Michael explained quietly. 3 days ago. The doctors say she doesn't have long." Marcus felt the world tilt. He pushed through the crowd and knelt beside her chair. Her eyes found his, still bright despite the droop on one side of her face. She reached out with her good hand and touched his cheek. "You remember?" she whispered, her words slurred but clear enough. "You remember what matters." "You saved my life," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "That night, you saved my life." Miss Dot smiled, that same wind chime laugh escaping despite everything. "No, baby. You saved your own life. I just showed you where to start looking." She died 2 days later, surrounded by people she'd helped, loved, and lifted up. The church couldn't hold everyone who came to pay respects. Wall Street executives stood next to homeless veterans. Book club ladies stood next to the people who'd slept in their doorways. In death, Miss Dot had done what she'd done in life. She'd erased the lines that divided people. Marcus spoke at her funeral, though he struggled to find words worthy of her. In the end, he kept it simple. "She taught me that we don't get to choose what we lose. We get to choose what we give. And if we give enough of ourselves away to others, we never really disappear." 5 years later, Marcus's disease had progressed significantly. He couldn't remember his career, his apartment, large chunks of his past. But he remembered Miss Dot, and he remembered what she'd taught him. He still volunteered at St. Anthony's, though now he needed help finding his way home. The regulars watched over him the way Miss Dot had watched over them, with patience, with kindness, with love. On the day he finally couldn't remember his own name, a new volunteer, a young woman recently laid off and despairing, asked him why he kept coming back when he could barely remember the day before. Marcus looked at her with eyes that held something beyond memory, beyond words. "Because of her," he said simply. "Always because of her." He might forget everything else, but he would carry Miss Dot's lesson in his bones, in his muscle memory, in the way his heart knew to open even when his mind could not hold on to why. She had taught him that humanity isn't something you remember. It's something you practice. It's something you are. And in a world that often measures worth by wealth and power, one small woman in cast-off clothes had shown him the only measure that truly mattered. Not what you keep, but what you give away. Not who you were, but who you helped others become. In the end, we are all just passing through. Our time limited, our memories fleeting. But kindness, real, purposeful, selfless kindness that echoes long after we're gone, rippling outward in ways we'll never see, touching lives we'll never know, changing the world one small act at a time. That was her legacy. And now it was his too.